Welcome to Simply SCAdian, no title required. This is Zoph. I am your co-host for this wonderful Zoomcast that I do with my friend Lucas Abernathy, aka Eric. And I'm just double checking here that we're live. It says we're live. Nope, we're live. Yay, we're live. So, I'll let you take it from here because I'm sort of doing tech stuff. Take it away, Lucas.
That's fine. So let's just good evening and welcome to Simply SCAdian, no title required. So again, our mission, as it is every week, is to highlight, spotlight the general populace of the SCA. We all know the people with the crowns, and we love them, and they do a lot for the community. But there's also a lot, and I'm going to say of us that don't have that yet, and maybe are aspiring to it, maybe aren't. Maybe just love where we're at as far as the society is concerned. So the mission is to find the people in your neighborhood who have a lot to offer the SCA, but maybe just don't have the notoriety of having gained some kind of title yet. So first, before we introduce the guest, let me just invite you, if you are one of those people, or more importantly, if you know those people, we'd love you to nominate somebody. Head to the Facebook page, Simply SCAdian, no title required. You can find the Google form there. Fill out the form. Let us know who in your area, anywhere, east, mid, we want from anywhere. We've got a lot of east and mid because that's where we're from. But if you can find somebody from one of the other kingdoms, from down south, from somewhere else, we would love to just spread the message of that there are lots of wonderful people out there who maybe just haven't gotten the notoriety yet. Perfect example is my friend who is joining us tonight, Úlfarr gylðir. First encountered the SCA in college in 2002, but due to life and location, and I think many of us can understand that, moved in and out of the society for several years, searching for his niche. However, in the past few years, he's found his place in both the barony of Setmore Swamp and in the Bardic community. Okay, he resides now in Setmore, so that's sort of how we know each other. With his wife Lillian and his daughter Aylin. He can often be found around the Bardic Fire, on the fencing list, or on the archery and thrown weapons range. So again, a common theme that we found is that people come in one way and then end up experiencing a lot here with us. Is currently serving as the baronial Bardic champion of Setmore Swamp. Úlfarr is a 10th century Norse skald hailing from Iceland, a storyteller, a poet, a traveler collecting stories around the world and sharing these tales of his journey around the Bardic Fire and sharing the story of how he got started in the society here tonight. Welcome, Úlfarr. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So again, I think we're going to start with our general question. I know it said a little bit in your bio of how you found the society, but maybe kind of expand on that. So you found it first when you were in college, but how did you get into the SCI?
So, because I found in college, we went to a fighter practice in Eisenthal, which is right across the river in PA from where we are right now. Because went to school in Easton, and we hung out with them a little bit. But it was kind of like really hard to, we were there for college, so it wasn't where home. So we kind of went to a couple practices, meetings, but not really any events because didn't have any of the garb, didn't have any of the gear, any of that stuff. So we kind of fell out of it. And then we went back in and we gave it a try once because we were like, well, let's get back into it. It's something we really want to do. So we went to an event and we were kind of outsiders. I mean, people were nice, but still like didn't know anybody, didn't know really what was going on. I think it was like Bear Tavern Inn or something like that. I forget. I remember there was a chess tournament. That's all I really remember about the event. There was a chess tournament and a feast, and it was in like a big hall. And then I guess a couple of years ago, we started going to more events more regularly. Went to one in Owlshurst, which is Central PA, and got involved in the Barony. And I started doing some like archery practices with the Barony, and then more and more stuff. And then started going to more baronial events like Quest and Black Griffin Inn. And then I started learning because before that, I really wanted to do Bardic, but I always pictured Bardic as being like musical because everywhere you went, Bardic was music. Everyone was singing, everyone was playing music. there weren't a lot of storytellers, and that was where my background was, you know, myths and stories. So then I started seeing people doing different types of bardic, and I'm like, you know, I can do this. This is something I want to do. So I did a couple of little competitions here and there, and then I did the Baronial Bardic, and that's basically how I've been since. I mean, it was the previous just left Baron and Barons were incredibly welcoming and very helpful with everything. So they really helped us get settled into where we are now.
How did you come to your persona? Did that come through? Because again, you said in the beginning you didn't really have much garb or whatnot, and then so did you kind of settle on that based on your myths or what?
When we first started out, I was kind of all over the place. Like, oh, I want to do this, I want to be Scottish, I want to be that. And then, you know, through reading and stuff, I more and more about the Vikings and really enjoyed their stuff. And so I basically pulled it from that. And then, you know, Penzic went to the 3-hour wait at the Herald's tent and signed up my the name and armory and everything, because I knew what I wanted for my armory, but I didn't really have a name. And I went to a book of like Icelandic names, and they showed me some. I'm like, this is what I'm thinking about. So, and I pulled it from that. So yeah, my persona came from the love of the Viking stories and history and things like that. So yeah, short answer.
So what's it been like for you to be Baronial Bard? How has that experience been?
It's been really good. Like I said, the Baron and Baroness were incredibly supportive, helping me out, like setting stuff up. I mean, I set up a web page for our Baronies Bards, our Facebook page, so that there could be a connection there. I've run a couple. I used being elected as Baronial Bard as an excuse to buy a fire pit for our house, so I can say, "Oh, I'm going to hold bardic circles now, so now we need one." So I both put in a fire pit for that. I've run a lot of. I did a couple bardic circles. I've been like the bardic champion in residence, because I rose to the title the year before this happened, before the whole quarantine happened. So the Black Griffin Inn would have happened pretty much in April of 2020. So that never happened. So I have continued, and it's canceled this year. So I'm continuing until at least April of 2022. Will I be as the Bardic champion? But I've done a lot of through that. I've done a lot of online Bardic circles, because Setmore's run a lot of events, virtual events, and we usually cap the night off with the Bardic circles. I'm usually in charge of setting that up and contacting other bards and people and saying, you know, we're doing this, if you want to come hang out and perform. So yeah.
But so that's Bardic is not all you do. I do want to spend more time on Bardic, but we'll go back to it. I want to talk you do archery and fencing and thrown weapons too. How did you get into, let's pick one, archery. How did you get into archery?
I've always enjoyed it. Like, I've always wanted to go shooting. Like, you go to like the Ren fairs, they have a little setup with the archery things. I ended up getting my own bow and arrow. I started with like a horse bow. I got it from a festival that we went to, and we did some shooting at a range or whatever, outdoor range. And then I found out about the practices it was at the Baroness before the 2 Baronesses ago at her house. She had a thing, and actually that ties into the thrown weapons, because they were running thrown weapons practice at that same event, so at that same practice. So I kind of picked up both at the same time. I started shooting there and doing the thrown weapon stuff.
Thrown weapons are awesome. I like if there's one martial art that's so incredibly easy to get into and fun, I would send everybody to the thrown weapons range first. I have such my arm is always so sore by the end of the day, but I have so much fun on the thrown weapons range.
Yeah, we put one up in the house in the backyard. My son throws axes very well. So I would say that is a good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I understand, you also are into leather work, and you've recently started an Etsy shop. Tell me about what kind of leather work you do and what got you into that.
Again, I've always been very crafty. I always enjoyed making crafts and stuff like that. So I just kind of evolved from one thing to the next, whether I'm working with foam or whether I'm painting or drawing. And through fair, I knew people who did leather work and started working with them and learning. And I kind of started teaching myself. And now I've kind of started. YouTube is an invaluable resource, I have to say, because I just watched the video, like, oh, now I know how to do this now. But I've done journal covers and bracelets and a quiver and things like that. Like a lot of it right now is Viking inspired. I actually picked up one of those Dover books that the royalty free pictures from historical finds, like a drawing from a runestone, drawing from the Osberg part, things like that. So I transfer those designs onto the various things and use those since they're actually historical designs with it. I'm also outside SCAdian style stuff. I also do a little bit of steampunk stuff as well. So yeah.
Nice. We'll have to drop your Etsy link into the chat.
You mentioned foam. I do know that Úlfarr is also an avid cosplayer, and does really beautiful work as far as some of the cosplay stuff is concerned too. So I think you definitely. I mean, just there are people commenting. Somebody commented that they loved your fur on the Facebook feed, and I'm like, you look great. So I just know that you bring that level of care, to both your passions. So who's your favorite cosplay that you've done so far? Just not to go too far afield, but I like that stuff. And I think most people listening kind of dabble in both areas too. So I don't think it's that far afield.
Favorite and both favorite and most hated, I have to say, was Baymax. Baymax was probably my favorite so far, and my least favorite at the same time.
You've done the Hawkman is outrageous. That you've done Hawkman, right? The full head. Yeah, that thing was
nice.
Cool. And now you're working. And now, if I'm not out of school, you're working on the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's it.
Mandalorian for me, and Sabine Wren for my daughter, and Bo-Katan for my wife.
Nice. Well, where can you do? I mean, well, everything's closed down, so you can't go to any cons right now either, huh? Or do they do those online as well?
No, I'm considering the amount of work. I figure I just get started, and when it'll be done when cons finally open up again. So
I'm sorry I'm yawning, everybody. Just let me explain. It's been a week from heck. So I keep yawning. It's not you. You're not boring me. You're very fascinating. I'm just tired. 8 p.m. is Mama Z's bedtime this week, I gotta say. So I want to go back to the whole Norse thing. Do you have any pieces memorized? I'm gonna throw that at you because if you do, I'd love to hear a short piece if you have anything prepared.
Oof.
And if the answer is no, that's okay.
I don't have anything right off, and a lot of the pieces are not short because I take them from like the prose Edda, so they're like,
oh,
yeah, or the poetic Edda. I do not have. I apologize. I don't have anything prepared.
No, dude, I totally just threw that at you.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite stories though from the poetic Edda?
I like from the poetic. There's one that I've done. I actually did for the Baronial Bardic, which is a story of Tyr and Thor going to Tyr's grandfather. I think it's Ymir. I forget exactly his name, but Hymir, where they go and they try to get a giant ale pot in order that the gods can have booze for their party. And it's the whole contest. It's actually the one where Thor goes fishing and throws his hook, uses the ox head and brings up the Midgard serpent, causing the earth to quake and such when he does it.
Nice.
Is that the one you won with, or what did you win with when you became the champion?
Well, that was one because it was a 2-round thing. So I did that, and the other one was the tale of Kamuapua and Pele, because I like to pull stories from places that aren't usually found in the SCA. Like they're in my repertoire. I have Hawaiian stories. I have some Middle Eastern stories. I'm trying to think of Native American, Nancy from Africa. So like I try to pull stories that don't get heard as much. Like you hear a lot of I do tell the Norse myths and I do tell, the Celtic myths, but you hear a lot of Celtic and the Irish stories, the Irish heroes, the Greek myths, sometimes the Romans and stuff like that, but you don't hear a lot. And a lot of times you don't consider like, yeah, that we are based in, fall of Rome to 16, whatever, but during that time, there are all these other places that are kind of off the map that existed, like the Hawaiian Island, the Polynesian people. They have all their myths and tales of Maui, tales of Kamuapua, the pig man, tales of Pele and the fire goddess and things like that.
I am such a dork because now I'm thinking of the Backyardigans episode with Pele. Did anybody have to suffer Backyardigans with their kids? Oh my gosh. All right. Anyway, but that's really cool. That's so cool that you spread out your stories throughout the whole world and not just the ones that and every time I hear the story of the wedding, the Loki and Thor dresses up as the bride, I still laugh even though I know all of the story because I've heard it so many times. Most of those Norse tales are just fabulous.
Yeah, they're one of the few that don't take themselves so seriously. That's a lot of I teach mythology, so I could expound forever. I'm glad that came up organically though, Ulfarr, because I know you told right after pandemic started, a friend, a couple that we have in common, did a meet and greet, like a just, hey, we haven't seen each other, a Zoom thing. And I'm sure everybody was doing it at the time. And Ulfarr told you told a Maui story that night.
Yes.
Yeah. So I knew that you did kind of dabble outside of like the European canon of storytelling, so I'm glad that came up. Do you have like a did you consider trying to I know there's people that in the SCA that are Japanese, that are Middle Eastern, that are Indian, that that kind of try to get out of that European area? Was that a consideration for you, was to kind of maybe try to go into another area?
No, because I really like the Viking history, the Viking garb, all of that stuff. So, which is why I made my persona Trader, because that means he's gone to places. He's been down in Constantinople. He's been down in the Rus. He's been in islands like Francia and whatever. I can't remember the name of Spain at the time, but like he's heard tales from travelers from all over, and he's gained these stories that he brings back with him and tells these tales. So it's kind of a tales from other lands, but still in persona sort of thing.
That's my favorite. I like it when stories have what's the word? Word for me, Lucas. Word for me. When they're relatable, when you're not just saying I heard a thing once and it's more of a personal tale. Those are always cool. Um, Lucas, save me.
Save you from yourself.
Save me from babbling.
How much? Okay, now again, because I know you personally and whatnot, so it's a bit of a. How much fencing do you do? Like, what are your interests and areas there? How long have you been fencing?
In the SCA, I would say mostly dabbled. I'm cleared for like single sword. I haven't gone beyond that because I was going to a lot of practices, and then practice was like 5 minutes away, and then moved down south, which is like an hour away. So I kind of I was right about to start, like, I'm gonna. Then I had an issue where I couldn't go to any fencing for a while, and then I was gonna go. I'm like, I'm gonna start going to the farther one, and then this hit, and then that all canceled. But I fenced like Olympic fencing in college. I was a saber fencer for like the line fencing, and then I started doing this. So I've done a couple. I did I fought at Quest. I was at the last 100 Years War or 100 Minutes War that happened. I did the melee there. But yeah, I haven't done a lot. I haven't done any of the Penzic stuff. The year of the pandemic was the year I'm like, I'm going to do the fencing list. I'm going to go out and do the battles and stuff. And yeah,
So speaking of Penzic, where do you camp at Penzic, and where can we find you when we go back to Penzic again? What fires do you tend to go to, or do you Bardic Ramble, or what do you do?
We camp at August Moon, which is off of the highway down the big hill road. It's about halfway down the hill road near above the Wedges and Gabriel's Landing, and think those it's like one stop. If you turn down the hill, you get to the highway, and then you turn right. It's like the next camp after Cloven Shield on the right hand side going down the thing. As far as Bardic at Penzic, I really just started getting into the last couple of years. Because we hadn't gone to Penzic a lot, so we just started getting into. We found a camp and started moving. There's usually an exhibition that I sometimes do that's down in the performing arts tent. I was honored to participate in a selected exhibition that's held by Duchess Keelan up in her camp that happens. So I was able to perform that last time, and I did Acres Bardic Circle, their kingdom.
Nice. Say I tend to firewalk. I like to just wander around Penzic and say, "Hey, you want a story?" And then I wander in and tell a story, and then I get a glass of water and leave.
I could also get Úlfarr in further trouble with you, Zoph. Úlfarr is also a local actor.
Woohoo! We
Yeah.
need more.
Yeah, he also does Circle Players, the main house I work with. Úlfarr has also been with them and done some other community theater in the area. So we're always looking for new blood. So
Nice.
have you ever thought about any of the acting at at the various events? I mean, since it's something I know you do.
I've thought about it, but it's kind of like there's so much stuff I usually have going on that it's like the commitment of having that like every day sort of thing is kind of gets tied up with everything else between, especially if I'm going to be doing fencing and like the battles and stuff like that. But I mean, I've considered it, and I've definitely, there are certain like little bardic things like there's an improv thing that I've been wanting to do that I keep forgetting. But I keep realizing that there's something happening at the same time that I can't try and do it. But yeah.
Well, I know Wormwood is watching right now, so again, Wormwood, you can headhunt. I'll send
Nice. Yeah, we need more men.
little shout out to you there, Wormwood.
So what is one of the things that you love about the SCA?
I think it's probably kind of an escape. It's an ability to be someone else. It's like being an actor almost for me. Like when I go on, I've done, as Lucas mentioned, I've done the Ren fairs, and that gives me a chance to put on different costumes, be a different person, so I can interact with the people. Like normally, I'm not really an extrovert; I'm more of an introvert. So, but if I'm not me, I can be someone else, and that allows me to just go out there and be more extroverted, to be able to tell the stories, to be just a completely different, and also that the historical, going back in, living the life, putting on the stuff, doing the things like the axe throwing and the night and the axe night, the thrown weapon stuff, and just the events and like the feasts, and it's just I don't know, all of that. It's just like being in a different time, honestly.
Have you ever had one of those moments at Penzic where you really feel like you've gone back in time? I've only had a few, and I mean, my first Penzic was 1993, and I think I've had 4 moments where I've stood there on the hill about to head down and heard the drums going, and I was like, wow, I'm really back in time. Have you ever had one of those moments?
I think the only time I can think was our first full week at Penzic. I went up to the field battle. It was the first time I ever seen a full field battle, and it was right before when all of the different armies come in with their delegations, and the Romans had their like Vestal virgins dancing in front of them, and like the pipes and the drums, and that was a sight to be seen. It was something I had never experienced on that level before.
I know your wife is involved in the SCA. Is your daughter also involved in the SCA? Is it a family affair, or she's still a little too young?
Hasn't done anything like any. She goes to events. Like she's
Okay.
one of the kids that goes and like we go and like the Baroness is the former Baroness child is about her age, and there's like a whole pack of them that they just kind of join up at things like Quest, and then they disappear for the day, and they're off. I mean, I think it was Black Griffin. They need to show me that they put a dead snake under a cone that they found, but I mean, she doesn't do any of the stuff. Like, there's really isn't a lot to do. There isn't. That's one of my. I know there's. She doesn't go to Penzic because that's just. We figure that's going to be too much. But there isn't a lot to do for kids, and especially in like the Bardic world. There isn't a lot of kids Bardic opportunities. It's all adults. There isn't a lot where younger kids can sit down. There had been talk about starting like a little bar. I had considered trying to talk to the people at Penzic or about starting like a junior Bardic circle for like one of these, like one of the event, like daytime events, like a no pressure thing, so that kids could come and sit. We don't have to worry about peers being nasty about it, because these are all kids who want to be there, stuff like that.
Have you run into nasty peers at other Bardic circles?
I was just going to say that. That sounded a little telling. I'm sorry.
Honestly, no, I haven't. I was more thinking of like, kids being nasty, because I've had my experience with that when I was younger. But as far as adults, I've never, any of the Bardic circles I've been at, I've never had a problem. Like, usually the people, like one of my earlier Bardic circles was when I had to run, because it was my first Bardic champion class. And the people there, the former Bardic champions who were there, were incredibly helpful, and like, this is how you run it, this is what you need to do. The people there were very, very helpful and kind. Everyone was respectful. So I've never actually had a problem at a Bardic circle, or seen a person have a problem at a Bardic circle.
Right. Good. I think that your idea, though, is a great idea, and we need to have more kid Bardic circles. And regular Bardic circles should be more welcoming to kids as well. I think but giving kids their own space, this is something that I fully support. And if there's anything I can do to help you make that happen, please let me know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that a lot of kids, especially like looking at my own daughter, like having a group of adults around is intimidating. If it's a bunch of like their peers or general area of their peers, like their age group, I think it's a little less, especially like I said, if everyone's there for the same reason. It's not like, oh, you're stuck in a classroom and you have to get up in front of the classroom and what the other kids say they're going to say because they have to be there, sort of thing. But this is like, SCAdian kids who want to be at a Bardic circle and want to hear and tell stories and sing songs and poems and stuff like that.
I will sponsor this, and I will have cookies for all of the kids. And we will have books and poetry books sitting out for kids who want to perform but don't have anything prepared. Boom. Let's do it.
That's the thing that just happened. It happened right here, everybody. I mean, it sounds to me, Úlfarr, like this is something that you could actually develop into something more. I hate to be teachery about this, but curriculum based. Do you know what I mean? Like we can do some classes with it that lead up to then the kids just kind of getting into the opportunity to perform for themselves, but almost develop a skill before you critique it. I think that's what you're saying, is that a lot of kids don't want to get up and be critiqued without ever having been given the opportunity to try and fail. I think that's where so that, I don't know. I kind of love it. I would certainly help out and, whatever I could do.
That would be awesome. Week-long session for the kids to work their pieces, or just like 3 days of working pieces, and then a performance at the Performing Arts Pavilion at Penzic, or in someone's camp. Like, that would probably be less scary.
Yeah, I think that would be a camp or something like that. That made it a little bit more about them and a little bit less about the performing necessarily.
Right, right.
Yeah, I kind of thought something like Runestone Hill or something like that, where it'd be just a place you could sit around, basically daytime circle, obviously without the fire, because younger kids and fire not always a good idea.
True.
Of course, older kids and Penzic, like adults and fire at Penzic, is never necessarily good either. So.
Especially some of the people we know, right? Úlfarr? There's a few friends in common who could stand to stay a little farther from the fire.
I'm not always been an old lady at Penzic. I did spend youth at Penzic myself, my younger 20s and 30s.
Well, I'm not saying that. I just like to I like to on the DL call out some people that we know. That's all. It's
Oh, okay. So what do you think is something the SCA can do better?
Uh, I mean, one thing I've noticed, and I've noticed this from various people talking in our barony and whatnot, is diversity. Right? There is kind of a lack of diversity amongst the SCA. I know that like I said, the former Baroness Teresa that was a big thing for her. Her champion was to like try and bring more diversity in. Like I guess blessed is the best way to be in Setmore, because Setmore is a good barony. They're very inclusive. They're very supportive. Everyone is kind of a family and together. They all get along. And the East in general is a very forward-thinking kingdom. Like a lot of the East is usually a leader in, this is things we do, this is things we don't do. So, but still bringing in more people, trying to reach areas that don't have like, local practices, local groups. I know that recently Setmore acquired a section which had previously been known as the Crown Lands, which was basically Jersey City, which was putting some more groups or getting more of those people to come in and try and reach out to groups, to sections that don't usually have areas like big city sections. I mean, I think in all of New York is under maybe one group. I'm not positive on that, but I think
New York City, yeah.
New York City, yeah. So maybe trying to fine tune it a little so that they can reach places that don't usually get the opportunity, or maybe more demos is the word, like going out to places and having demos and showing like this is something you can do. We welcome you to come in. I mean, I think obviously the SCA is a big in-person thing, but the fact that everything that has been able to be done through quarantine, through Zoom, might be a step to saying, all right, you can't make the trip out to here, you can't travel to this section, but you can still be a part of, we can have maybe a virtual event every so often that people can come in and sit around and be like, all right, this is something I'm interested in. I'm working on an ANS project, or I'm working on a Bardic piece, and I can't make a, hour long or even half-hour long bus ride, or if I don't have a car or whatever to get into that, I can still be a part of this and start feeling it out. And when big events come, then I have a reason, because I know people. I'm not going there cold and being like, I'm going to make all this trip in, and then I'm not going to know anyone. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be stuck there.
One of the things one of the local groups around me does is they do a huge demo every year, and then they have an open house. 3 weeks later, their final meeting of the year, they have weekly meetings, the final meeting of that month. So they do like 2 weekends of huge demos, and then the 31st or whatever it is of that month, they call it their open house, and each guild has a table in the room, and people can just sort of wander around and talk to people, meet people without the crush of everybody's busy doing their own thing. So you sort of feel like really an outsider, like, do I really want to go sit with these people embroidering? I don't embroider. I don't know what am I, and I can watch the fighters, but they're fighting, so I can't really talk. You know what I mean? It's very awkward. So I love their open house every year. It's really a great opportunity. And maybe that's a way that we could get more people coming if more groups did open houses after they did their demos.
Mhm.
Putting it out there.
One of the questions I kind of, because you didn't really talk about it when you talked about getting into the SCA, and I just know that it's been a common theme for us, and it kind of fits with what you're talking about right now. When you went to your first event, like when you showed up completely brand new, did you feel welcomed into the community? Were there people who approached you and talked to you? Were people approachable? Because I know several of our guests that we've talked to, that's been a big thing for them, is that once they went in, they can connect with like some of them, like Kari, our first guest, talked about that really cool guy that came up and was like, oh yeah, so try this and do this. And I know a few of our other guests that kind of share similar experiences. Did you feel welcome?
The very first event I went to, I wouldn't say I felt outsider. Like I didn't feel like a pariah, like no people were ignoring me, but I didn't feel part of it. I felt just kind of like I'm here, I dressed up, but I don't really know anyone here. I don't really understand how things are going, etc. But like I said before, and I've harped on this a lot, but it really is a big deal as far as feeling where I am. When I came into Setmore, the Setmore people were always like, it was Baroness Jahanine. When I first did my archery practice, was always like, oh, hi, welcome. This is what, how can I help you out? What can I do? Colin, who was the thrown weapons guy, basically is like, here, I'll show you how to do it. This is the rule. This is what you do. This is how we do it. Oh, you need knives. I make my own. Here, I can make a set for you. You can do it. The Baroness and Baron were all like, welcome. And they always make it a big deal to, give a little bit of a thing to newcomers at the events. Like they have newcomers up and they give them like a little piece of pottery or a little token or something. So yes and no. Like the first time, no, but after that, when I got to the right group, I guess it's one of those finding your niche things. Yes, I felt like I was part of, there were people to connect to, yeah.
Have you had the opportunity to be that person for somebody?
I have done it a little. There were a couple of people who came to Quest and were interested in doing Bardic. And I said, come out to our Bardic circles. So they came out to a couple of Bardic circles that I was holding at the house and hang out there. So I was able to do that at least that much. So
cool. Good. For the folks at home, tell them what Quest is.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. 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 They're not all from here. So
all right. Quest is Setmore Swamps. It's kind of like a mini Penzic. It's a 3-day event with fighting. It's basically where they choose most of their champion, their martial champions. There's the archery championship, the baronial archery championship, the baronial thrown weapons, the baronial heavy, and the baronial fencing tournaments all happen at this. And there's also a big quest, which they call it, which is themed every year. One year it was Vikings, one year it was Baba Yaga, and they have basically an obstacle course where they give sheets of things you have to complete and go to these different things. Like there was one that had the Viking year. I remember I was running the riddle station where I dressed myself up like Odin. And I told riddles to the kids and the adults, try and solve them. And there was one that had like a flip cup, Viking drinking flip cup with like water, and there was one that had like this Viking pillow game where you have to put your hand on a stump and close your eyes and hit the other person with a pillow, which I think was a bag of fish in the Viking times. And so it's a big party and people camp there, and it starts like Friday night and then it goes through like Saturday there's the feast, and they always run a Bardic circle Saturday night, and then Sunday they do finishing up and then the big court and everything, and they usually do their Penzic camp meeting and things like that there.
Yeah, I just thought you'd find that cool that it's like themed to a specific thing every year.
I like that.
And like the archery targets are themed to look like whatever it is. There's always that quest that goes through it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So if somebody were to join the SCA today, what's one piece of advice you would give to them?
Don't be discouraged. Like, if you feel like, because when I started out, one thing that discouraged me from starting Bardic right away was because I saw a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people were singing, a lot of people were playing music at the events, and I thought, this really is my place, because at the time I wasn't doing a lot of singing. I didn't have any instruments or anything like that. I mean, I had done singing before, but not so I was comfortable doing it on my own. So I felt like, this isn't my place. But once I, stuck it out and started investigating and looking around, I saw, there is Bardic, there's storytelling, there is poetry, there's things like that really said, this is something you really enjoy. And it has been. It's been something I found that I have a real knack for the storytelling, and it's something I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy getting into the story. I really enjoy like the audience reaction and having the audience in that, that moment where you captivate, you can tell that the audience is there and they're listening and they're like waiting to hear how things up, or that laugh they get when you have that joke that you inserted. I will say that, for one, when I did the Maui story that Lucas was talking about, I did actually at the East Kingdom Bardic Royal Championships last year, and I ended it with, because I would, as everyone does, you end it with like a thank you, but I ended the story with thank you and you're welcome, and that got a pretty big chuckle from everyone, because so I would just definitely say, if you're interested in something, just talk to people and don't be discouraged if you think that this is not where you want to be, because something doesn't fit exactly the way you want it, because there is a niche somewhere. You just need to find it.
Would you also give them the advice of, and if it's not there, investigate how to make it be there?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I will say that could probably be a little kind of, that for me personally, that would be a daunting task to like, I'm going to start this when I don't know anyone here, but I know there are people who are more driven in that fact that are like, oh yeah, I could totally do this if it was.
Well, in a 2-second conversation, you started the kids Bardic League. I mean, the KBL is going to be huge. You all heard it here first. Okay.
Yeah.
You started that, so.
So I wanted to, can you tell us the link to your Etsy shop too?
Yeah, it is just etsy.com/Ulfshoard, ULFSHOARD, one word.
All right. Just anybody who wants to go check your work out.
It's really pretty stuff, guys. Again, we're friends, and so I've seen a lot of it, and that quiver was outrageous. So, like, if you're really looking for like a custom piece, this is your guy.
Awesome. Anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to tonight?
I don't think so.
Lucas, was there anything else that you wanted to ask?
Talk to me a little bit about. Again, we were so look at us moving up in the world. Soph and I were interviewed for the Barony newsletter, which is called the Mud Puppy out here. Did your wife come into the society like kind of after you were doing it? Was it something you introduced her to, or again, I've always known that, just if I can speak mundane for a minute, it's always kind of been Dave and Amy for me. So I don't really know like how that worked for you guys.
She actually had encountered it. She started school at Rutgers, so she had encountered like the local group there. So she knew about it before I did, and then she was like, there's a thing, and we should look into it. And we looked into the Eisenthal, and that's where we found that they had a meeting like not far from where our college was. So it was kind of her that started it, and then we've just kind of been doing it together but apart. Like, she does her thing, did her events, she's in the ANS. I do I've done a lot of the Bardic and like some of the martial stuff and things like that.
Cool.
That's cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Again, you have been watching Simply SCAdian, no title required, with our guest Úlfarr Gylðir. And our guest in 2 weeks is going to be from the Mid-Realm, good friend of Lucas and mine as well, Jalicia at Northcliffe, who is a service junkie, a musician. She's been part of the Known Role Players. That's how we know her. She's a pretty awesome person. We're looking forward to talking with her. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful evening.